Do you like conversation on a variety of topics? Feel like no one wants to talk about the things that interest you? Tired of only hearing the same political, sports, or catastrophe talk? Yeah, we feel that way too. Join two high-functioning geeks as they discuss just about anything under the sun. We can't tell you what we'll be talking about each week because we don't know where our brains will take us. It will be an interesting conversation though, so hang on and join us. Here comes the Relentless Geekery.
Fine, thank you. So let's see. Let me turn that off. Get this.
Adjust.
Well, it's fine. I always try to make sure that I have as much memory in the system for this as possible to help with throughput or whatever else might be going on with resolution and stuff like that. And
Right.
usually with my big Skynet 3 monitor setup, I have lots of stuff open. So, and also for the color on the screen, I have to make sure that I set my monitor to night shift so that it doesn't, you know what I mean? There's a whole bunch of just little things that make it so that this experience is what our fans want to see.
Right. So with that, I have struggled with this weird issue, which could be Windows 11 related, but I can't tell for sure. So I upped my speed. They upped the speed in our area, so I have almost a gig now. And I was like, woo! I checked it. It was getting up around 600 to 800. I'm like, okay, that's I was at 300 before. 6 to 800. I'm happy. That's great. Blah blah blah. So I've been having some weird issues with the network not connecting and stuff. So I went and checked it from my computer. I was down to 7 megabits per second.
Wow. Wow.
And
Okay.
I was like, that sucks. So I got on the router, checked it from the router. Router's fine. Router is doing like 600. So I know it's coming in. It's something with the router or my system, whatever. Played with it. I hooked up the Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi kept disconnecting. And I'm like, what is going on? So I went and got a little $20 dongle, plugged into USB-C, plugged my Ethernet in. Boom! I'm up to like 100 again. I'm not hitting the 3 or 4, but it went up to 100. So I'm like, what
Huh.
is going on with these issues? You know?
Yeah. I'll tell you, we've talked about this before. The more that they have like auto correcting and that it kind of self tunes itself and stuff like that, there's always partial overhead because it's having to do all the monitoring and that is itself traffic. But it's also, it takes us away from, I've seen 48 different kinds of problems and I kind of know what to do in each case. After a while, it's like, oh God, I'm going to turn it off and turn it back on again. I used to, I have really liked getting to know those things about how to tune it, how to balance between high and low band. The latest mesh guys now have an ultra high band, like up at, I'm curious about a lot of those things. But for many things, when I first install it, that's when I do all the tuning and stuff. And then when you start to get little degradations over the course of time, it's like, well, did they push something that's doing software that's busier than it was before? Or do I have to go around and turn various different devices on and off and have reattach, whether it's Wi-Fi or cable? We have had the worst problem with our printers. We tried to put all of our printers on, not AirPlay, I'm trying to think what it's called, AirPrint, let's call it something like that. And they drop on and they drop off at inopportune times. At one point, both Colleen and I on first and third floor can see all the printers, and then one becomes unavailable, and we can't seem to find it on the network, but you can create a new printer within
Right.
that dialogue. And so now I've got like 4 different versions of Epson and 4 different versions of Brother, and I have to keep track of. And really, then I go look, well, I'll just get rid of all the old ones. Somehow I can't find a way for one particular brand of printer to get rid of old virtual printers and stuff like that. So it all that convenience becomes all that annoyance when it works 80% of the time.
Right.
When it doesn't work, we're getting ready to leave for the airport. I was going to print off a few, make sure that I have my tickets not only on my phone, but paper so that no matter what, and a couple maps and a couple tickets for the concert or whatever like that. And you just can't count on that being available. So I've started doing things like first thing in the morning, if I got a show that night, I go and look to make sure I got, and all different kinds of ticket agencies, especially, they all have different standards as to whether you can have it on your phone or you can add it to Apple Wallet, or you like even if you print it off. This is an odd one. Like, don't print this screen off. You have to create the PDF or something like that to make sure that it's truly a barcode that can be read, or like the whatever it does for standard sizing, it isn't what's on your screen. It's like more human readable but less machine readable. And I don't want to have to remember for 6 different ticket agencies who used what standard. The great thing about standards is that everybody gets one. It's so annoying to find out that I don't know, maybe they did a little bit different to get 10% efficiency, but for a human being working with, and maybe I'm an odd one because I do buy tickets not only from Ticketmaster but from 6 different agents, Axios and Eventbrite and whoever else puts them out, and they all seem to have created their own thing instead of looking at, like, is there an industry standard, or is you would think that there would be for everybody who's got handhelds at a concert. They want it just like at Playhouse Square. It just wants to go, and once in a while when it doesn't work, or it's I don't always mean to go on and on like this, and yet it really seems like if I just start the topic, it's like I can think of all these times that for whatever reason
Yeah.
I know I have it, but I have to go not even into, like, sometimes it'll send you a note for your calendar, and then in the calendar is a reference that'll take you to whatever it, like if that website is available, it'll take you to a barcode. But sometimes it doesn't; it just has a reservation number. And then I'm like showing it to somebody at Playhouse Square. It's like, oh no, sir, we're going to need the barcode. It's like, well, this is what they gave me. This is all you gave me. So what do I do now? So,
Right.
oh my God,
And like I told Colin, I said, you go back 25, 30 years ago, I would have been all about tinkering and fiddling and getting in there and the drivers and checking all the settings. And I love doing that stuff. I did it. I've done networking, gone to businesses and done it for whole businesses and stuff. I've done that. I don't want to do it anymore. I just want it to work, damn it.
honestly, I've gotten to that level. I don't think it's impatience. I think it's just if they keep presenting it as being we're making your life easier, it's more about convenience, and it's everything, right? You know what I mean? Like Colleen and I have been um, she's the tax lady and she really understands taxes well and tax software. But for whatever reason, TurboTax keeps doing interesting things. Like maybe it's not just state by state, but it's even version to version. Something that she remembered there being a feature that nowadays they have it. You don't have to go into the forums. You get interviewed, and then after you get interviewed, you should know. Well, that went into Schedule C, or line 37, or whatever else it might be. And whenever they change it, and it's like, well, that's not only wasn't what it was last year, but that's not where it should go. How do you fix that? How do you manually correct it? And every time that there's a manual correction, then all of a sudden it doesn't do the recalc correctly. And without going into it a ton, with the 3 brothers having inherited money from mom and dad and having to do Schedule Ks and a trust fund and all that kind of stuff, that's especially when if they tout that they have those features that make all that easy, then you just want it to work. You don't have to go and buy the H&R Block book. Do they even make those anymore? Or you don't want to go talk to a tax consultant to just figure out what is supposed to be embedded in the software. So it's, and when you go, as you know, state to state, when we had things that were
Right.
here and Florida and Indiana and especially California, because that's where my parents live, you have to comply. It's not maddening, but it sure is. Whatever time you used to allocate to it, we'll get it done in a big weekend, we'll get it done in a week. Now you're always having to, like, out of uncertainty, go, well, we better start on that 3 weeks in advance. And then if we run into no problems, then yay, we get to be done early. But you can't count on what it used to take to be able to head out your door with your tickets in hand or whatever else it might be.
Right.
So,
Yep.
hell.
Absolutely. I totally agree. All of that. And I have the same problems with printers too. When we had a lot of people living here, they were always like, the printer's not working. Make it work. Why isn't it working? I'm like, I don't know. Nothing's changed. It just, the, the protocols down at the TCP level, when the printer goes to sleep, it loses them and then it doesn't automatically connect again. And
Reload.
what do you want?
Yeah, I just, the segue being, I just went to Fan Expo this weekend, and they
Yes.
really
How was
tried to
that?
make it like there's no printed programs anymore. And I always like, as you know, I like a grid where you can see when you're going to a program what else is happening at that same time, and what room is it in, and all that kind of stuff. And now it's only in your phone, and you're endlessly scrolling back and forth to say, all right, I got a 1, a 1:15, a 1:30. It doesn't have a start and end time for everything. So you're hoping if I go to the 1 o'clock, they start to standardize everything's going to be 45 minutes. So there's a passing period, but they don't all start on the hour. And so there's that continual overlap problem. And so then it's every time I go into a room, I'm like, well, I really want to like get up close because I want to hear what they have to say. But if I have to duck out because the next program starts 15 minutes early, then I want to sit in the back middle so as not to be disruptive when I leave.
Right.
But then after a while, it's like, oh, everybody is dealing with this. I've seen so many people get up rudely right in front of a speaker and kind of like interrupt their talk. But that's what you have to do when they don't set it up so that it's easy on everyone.
Right.
Even the act of checking in, you go there with your ticket and so, okay, I'm in. And here's an app. And then you have to like validate your app. And the app isn't about validating, proving who you are. It's so they can collect more information. It's more of a survey and make sure that they have, and like, I hate that the misnomer, the eponym, not eponym, the whenever they overload a term, so that if it's going to be about validation, it really should be about security and proving you who you are. If you're going to call it, um, sift more information out of every consumer. I know it's not politic to say that, but I hate that they do that.
Yeah.
That they lie about it. So
And
overall,
well, here, but a little devil's advocate on that one, and I agree. The problem is if they say, "Hey, can you give us some information on demographics or what you like?" Blah blah blah. The reason being because if you like these types of shows, we can let you know when other ones happen. We can know how many, and we can know that 90% of you are 40-year-old males. So we'll get stuff that 40-year-old males like. I mean, I understand, but people are so paranoid. They go, "Oh, I can't tell them any of that. That's security." And then they're like, "Well, I didn't know that was coming. Well, this show sucks. I didn't get anything that I liked." And it's like, but you will like hand your credit card to a 16-year-old waiter and let them walk away with it. You will go on and download, "Oh, this is a free app that somebody told me about.
a
I'll just go
flashlight
through it."
app, exactly.
Yeah, people, they get all upset about the things that aren't that big a deal, but the things that really do matter, they're like, "Well, I was just doing this." It
Right.
drives
They
me
don't have a
crazy.
sense of proportion. The other thing, like it used to be, once you know that they collect that information, it used to be that they would throw you a sop. Hey, you're in a drawing to get some fun prize if you give us your information. Now they make it that it's a requirement of attendance, which is kind of BS. And if anything, how about if you're going to ask for that stuff, get it on the web while you're buying the ticket so that I can be typing it instead of handing it on the phone, and that you don't have these huge backups with people milling around in little eddies of people because they're not allowed to go in the gate until they do this thing. Like all the
Or
things.
worse, we've been waiting for a half hour and now the gate opens. You walk and stand in the gate, and that's when you're playing with your phone after 30 minutes and you're in the way of everybody.
That's right. And
I
I even
just had a,
commented on that, when they set it up that it has to be that way, but then they don't supply enough handhelds to get everybody to go in, or the people aren't allowed to do it until, like, sometimes you want to do it and the app is not yet available and it turns on at 1 to 10 when 10 o'clock is opening time. It's like you created this problem. All the
yes.
people that should have planned ahead a little bit. So
Uh,
overall, it really was just what I wanted Fan Expo to be. Lots of people I wanted to meet and things I wanted to look at, maybe buy, but all the weird little overheads. There was all kinds of glitches done as to, like, sometimes there was supposed to be a panel of 3 people, and someone comes in like 20 minutes late, and it's like, oh, I had it in my schedule as this. It's like, you're lying. Everybody else had it in their schedule as this. If you would have glanced at it, it would have been better to just say, I'm sorry I'm late, instead of, then when you know that there's glitchy parts of the system, then people start taking advantage of that as if it's wrong or fragile. And it's like, no, if you use it, it works right, but you didn't use it. And whatever other, like I said, silly things that I commented on, it's always weird to be the captive audience thing. When you know you're there, and it's always been like this, right? Maybe airports have gotten better now that if you have airport food, tastes terrible and it's expensive, but they know that they have you. Well, now that's what they have at the convention center, is that it's like there's terrible, non-nutritious food, but for high prices and long lines and whatever else it might be. It it could be so much better an experience if someone really said, how could we have not 90% of the people walking out of the cafeteria grumbling about what a shitty experience it was. Instead, that could be another nice part of this. And then when you get to the survey thing, it won't be, I like the guests, I like the vendor's room, food sucked. And
they don't have
get feedback and like, hey, we could make this better if we wanted to. No, it's a profit center now. You know what I mean? So
and they don't have great area to sit and eat there because they're trying to maximize the vendor space to get money from vendors. So there's like 3 tables and they have 4,000 people there to eat.
yeah,
And
that was not a problem at this one at the
okay.
whatever the Huntington Convention Center or something like that. It really seemed that they did have and more than one location to do it and stuff like that. But even like I don't know, the pinch point thing. Anybody who's lived at all in this world, you don't get to the bottom of the elevator escalator and stop. You keep on going until you're in the wide open area and don't and as we've laughed about, when I'm coming down the escalator, sometimes I don't go around them. I walk into them because the escalator pushed me into them. And sometimes I give a little growl, kind of an animal signal, so that if they want to hear subsonically that something's about to happen. But it just weirds me out that they think that my journey on the escalator is done. And it doesn't happen once in a while. It happens every fourth person.
Yeah.
How can you be that unaware? It's just a weird, it can't be that every parent didn't teach their child, keep going, Billy, get out of, like there's elevator etiquette, right? You let the people out first and then you go in because otherwise you create the traffic jam. And the same with getting off an escalator and same with any kind of pinch point. And yet, and I did see this happen and it was actually very heartening. They had, waiting for a talk, you can't just go all the way down the hallway because it gets too long and too messy. So they actually have little serpentine lines with tape on the ground, and most people are decent, and maybe especially the geek crowd, they're decent. But once in a while, somebody cheats and jumps into a line that wasn't theirs. And multiple times I heard not just me say, hey, and you know what I mean? Like, and maybe didn't stop them, but at least they didn't just sit there cowed. I really hate it when people take advantage of that system. And I wish that somebody with a handheld would come over as the line police and say, why don't you wait and go back to your place in line? Like everybody, look at, there's hundreds of people here. How are you, Mr. or Mrs. Special?
Yeah. It happens on the road all the time too.
Oh, yeah.
All the time like at a light and I get, the green light and I start to go forward and the guy is turning left and like roars in front of you. It's like, ah! And then
Right.
they flip me off like, what the heck, you know?
But I will, so having, it's kind of funny. Some of the posts I put to Facebook started off grumpy because they had grumpy things happening in the morning. But then over the course of the day, when you're getting a chance, wow, that's like most of the cast of Smallville, most of the cast, the main cast of Supernatural. It's Felicia Day, who I think is just an amazing human being. That's really what I'd love to mention is that all those things, they were really good about getting guests and sets of guests.
Yeah.
And the interviewers were 2/3 canny, where they really asked good questions and had questions that had been submitted. They've stopped doing the thing where they have like a mic out in the middle of the audience and everybody has to step up. And then you get the varying qualities of how people won't get to a question. They have to say, well, here's why I'm a longtime fan and let me make my question 3 minutes instead of one. All of that. But, so it was very satisfying in terms of, like David Tennant was there, one of the most favorite of the Doctors Who, except that he was the very last thing on Sunday. And I guess they did that to make sure that everybody stayed around to do a little extra shopping and whatever else it might be. But then his program was cut short. And like, wow, everybody in this packed place waited to see him. And he's the guy that you're going to cut short. That was a really bad move. So, but the guests were mostly charming. Like I've been there when they had certain people that really are kind of surly or not a good interview. They're not communicative and whatever. Almost everybody had fun things to say, and for many of the casts, you could see that there really is affection, there's teasing, there's family aspects going on. If you make a show for Supernatural for 14 years, however long it ran, you have to have a certain amount of we like each other in order to
Yeah.
continue doing this. You don't want to go every day and bite the words out because you hate the person you're doing a scene with, So it was in all it as a geek thing, not the William Shatners and the movie star names, but all kinds of people who have achieved wonderful fame in this particular thing. I love going every year and saying, well, maybe people don't know who Alan Tudyk is outside of it, but if you're in the field, everybody loves Alan Tudyk. And same with this, why can't get his name now? Who replaced Crowley on Supernatural? Why can't I get his name? He's one of those guys that he's not only been in Supernatural, but many other things, and sometimes playing variations on that kind of, you know, a charming but evil character and stuff like
Well,
that.
I mean, there was Pellegrino who did Lucifer. He's one of my favorites.
He was there, exactly.
I think it was wasn't Gabriel there? No, not Gabriel.
Like I said, I can't think of Crowley's name, but
Zazel, maybe.
he's very witty when he's speaking, and Padalecki was there, not Ackles, but
Right.
and they really had good rapport back and forth, and even talked about the first time that he called him Moose after the writers had experimented with any number of like good insult names, that's the one that like cracked up the crew. And then that's, I guess we're going with that. Sometimes, those little ad libs come out and they become permanent part of the canon, if you will.
Right.
Um, it was very cool to see a panel that had multiple Supermen. They had Welling and Graber, who had been one of the voice of Superman the animated series, and then Brandon Routh. And it's kind of funny, that breaks not the fourth wall, but like whatever that wall is of fantasy versus reality. It's like, okay, we got multiple Supermen. There's really only one, and yet their take on what they did with the character, how they auditioned for it, why they either always wanted to play it or was like, I didn't even read comics. You know what I mean? It was very cool to see all the variations on a theme going on there. And so I just almost all the presentations I was really charmed by, and even in a huge room where you're not super close, they have the big, if you will, diamond vision screens up on the side and stuff like that, so you can see facial expressions, you can see body language and all that kind of stuff. I found some treasures.
Nice.
Again, Peter Tomasi, who has done some wonderful Green Lantern, especially with artist Doug Monkey. How many times I said people's names and people were like happy to correct me. It's not Aragonese, it's Aragones, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, but that's like any other thing where you read and you have a vocabulary word, but you never heard it said out loud, and so you give it a shot. I bought a nice volume from him, from Tomasi, because I really like his work on Green Lantern and all that kind of stuff. Also had a chance to talk with Michael Golden, who he has made some of the most iconic covers. And in fact, he had a whole bunch of stuff for sale, either prints or comic books. And the one I really would have wanted to get, and maybe this even comes to mind, a famous Marvel fanfare cover where I thought it was Sauron, but it's actually a pterodactyl, but it has like one of the X-Men in its claws. And it just, if you were to step into a comic book store and see 200 comics on the wall, you would point at that one and say, oh my God, that's great. So I had small frustrations over just what I was looking for didn't happen. But as usual, I talked to all kinds of new authors, starving artists, and so forth. And I patronized. I bought various different things to make sure I will try your series. And then, hey, you do have a website. So in case I like it, I can get the rest. Yes, I can. Because there's nothing more frustrating than getting the first in a series of 3. And then you can't seem to find how to.
Right.
It used to be like that much more. Nowadays, of course, everything is online, either by a Libris or Amazon or various different ways of selling things through Facebook or something like that. I got a fun ornament that had a 20-sided die in the middle. So I get it's very fun to have things that are very particular, not only to the places that Colleen and I have visited, but I got a little thing of Malort up on the tree because it's pretentious drinking. And same with Chambord, we have all kinds of things that are wonderfully specific to Colleen and I's heritage and interest and that kind of stuff. And now I have a D&D ornament. So that's kind
Nice.
of cool.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
okay. It was very easy to lose track of time. It just, and I kept having to glance at the phone to make sure I wouldn't miss my next program. But again, lose track of time is not right, but the day flew by. There were so many cool things going on that every day I was there from like 10 to 6, and I would have been there even later for some things, but we had plans, a party we had to go to, and Nick Griffin last night at Hilarities and stuff. So I was like, well, I'm not going to see the big cosplay contest and parade this time. But, I've seen that a lot, and so I guess it's okay to make sure that we go to this other thing instead.
Yeah.
But, I did have the Colleen, I usually, multiple times I took the bus in, but then Colleen would sometimes come and pick me up. And always, when she picks me up, I'm like the little kid getting in car with mom. You know what I mean? There's a famous, if you ever get a chance to look for this one, Triumph, the insult comic dog, was at a Comic Con, I think in Vegas, and he's actually like working his way down the line, and he's scathingly cutting any number of geeks that are doing things. And one guy had a great Darth Vader outfit, and it has that whole row of buttons and stuff like that. And his question was, which of these buttons is the one you push to call your mom? And that's what I think when Colleen comes to get me, is that,
Right.
Mom, look, I got treasure, and all that kind of stuff. But Colleen was very patient with me for, I'm all enthusiastic about silly things. I spent a little bit of money. I just had a grin the whole weekend because I still really love this stuff. And to get a chance to thank the Michael Goldens of the world for 40 years worth of joy that they brought to your life. I've said this before. It's not a Comic-Con anymore. It really is all those things, right? It's all the fantasy and science fiction, and movies and television and video games and all that kind of stuff. So they have a wonderful artist's alley, but it's not teeming like it might once have been when I went to the Chicago Comic-Con. And it really was, good Lord, Jack Kirby and Irv Novick and all these kinds of places. But then the cool thing about it is you get a chance to really not just shake hands and say thank you so much and move on. On Sunday morning, I had this wonderful conversation with Michael Golden, and I kept making sure that I wasn't blocking other fans from getting to him or giving him a chance to sell his wares and stuff. But just like Steranko a couple of years ago and other people it's just so nice to have. And I know comic books quite well, and so I'm able to drop references to various different
Right.
things, and they know you're not just gushing, you really are. You really love their work, and you can remember why you love it, and specific instances, and then that gets them to share fun stories behind. Oh yeah, I remember I was working on that, and actually I was really sick, and so maybe some part of what came out was the cold medicine. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Right.
I I know I'm gushing, and I apologize, but one more
It was,
story. Once in a while, it's cool to be smart. And I was in a lecture with a doctor who was going through, here's the most probable medical explanation for all kinds of things that are a big part of, here's the zombie plague, here's what werewolfism might be, whatever else it might be. And she was giving away prizes for when she asked a question, and people would answer. And because I'm an elder, when she asked, what's the disease that put people in iron lungs, that's not in public consciousness for everybody that's of a certain young age, but I knew it was polio. And so I won a little hat. I won a new beanie, and it was like an orange one. So I was just so freaking happy. Here's the one that so I talked with Ted Sikora, our hero from Hero Tomorrow Publishing and Apama and Punchville and Punchline and Tap Dance Killer and all that kind of stuff. And
sorry.
that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
And he had a contest where a current cover for Punchline is an homage to a previous comic book cover. And he said, so anybody who could name it, then they were in the drawing to be able to get like a cool metallic special edition cover and stuff like that. And it didn't come to me right away. But then we're catching up and I'm talking and stuff like that. And we've talked about this before. There's a French expression like, esprit d'escalier, the spirit of the staircase, where when you're in a conversation and then you leave the conversation and 20 minutes later, a good line comes to you and it's like, oh, I could have
Right. Right.
had the right insult or whatever. While he and I continued to talk, he saw it happen, I kind of like froze and looked away for a minute. It's like, I think that's when J. Jonah Jameson discovers his son is Manwolf. And it was. And like, honestly, it came, I don't know where it came from. I always portray that as being, while I'm talking to you, I have guys that are in my brain going through
Right.
and
Yes.
like, hey, look what I found. It really is. And so he like laughed at he got to see it in real time. Colleen is kind of used to it now. I know that's kind of a weird thing because it happens pretty often that everything I've ever learned, there's an old book, maybe by Frederick Pohl, called Orn, that was about a creature that like reincarnates like a phoenix, but it retains all the memories of previous lives. And it just is amazing how much you accumulate if you pay attention. You know what I mean? And so very much within Mensa, it's fun to be able to do that. That's a lot of where a sense of humor comes from, is that you have all these real weird fragments and the connections, the ties between them, and things pop out that are one step away from being right in line, but it's a joke then because it's like jarringly different, or you know what I mean, amusingly different, that kind of stuff. And oftentimes in conversation, it really will be, we'll be talking about some movie star, we can't quite come up with the name, and then like in the middle of the next part of the conversation, I'll blurt out, Ozzy Osbourne. And it'd be like, well, because somebody in my mind, I must have a whole bunch of different assistants running around in my head that are going through that stuff. And so I just was so amused that I got a chance to not have it be, oh, sure, you met the Rolling Stones in the bar. Everybody has stories that are like a little suspect, but once in a while you get a chance to just show off a little bit or be amused together by, don't know how it works, but it often does. Isn't that the funniest thing? Who knows about that exact juxtaposition of, this guy's leaning back and this guy's looming over, and what
Right.
it's about that. I know I'm going on too much about it, but it's amusing as hell. The brain is such a mighty, mysterious thing that out of how many comic book covers have I seen? 100,000, right? Just a vast number. And the elements, it can't be so jarringly different. There's comic book conventions and tropes as to, the one where someone's holding their dead loved one, you know what I mean? Where it's Superman, or whatever else it might be. There's famous ones like that. And often they'll say, this is an homage to an old Jack Kirby cover, an old John Byrne cover, whatever else. It's kind of cool that I don't know how it works, and yet it does. And I don't know that I can count on it working. And yet when it does, it's just like, I'm as amused as you are. I kind of can't believe that my brain is capable of that. That the neural net that everybody's talking about nowadays, it really does work. That out of tiny snippets of information, it kind of jumbles them and looks at the diamond from every facet, and then click is a match, and you blurt it out, and I just love it.
I saw Ted about a month ago at a small toy show that Colin
Okay.
was at,
Yeah.
and he showed me that cover. He had it on his phone. He didn't have it
Oh, okay.
available. So yeah, and he's like, "Do you know what cover that?" I'm like, it looks familiar, but I didn't get it. But when he showed me and compared it, I'm like, "Oh, I see it. That's pretty awesome."
I'm so glad that you didn't tell me, because I would have hated to be like, I wouldn't have faked it, of course, but I would have hated to be like, well, I didn't even get a chance to play it because
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
already
Well, I
reviewed
didn't
it for
know he
me.
was going to do the contest, but it's a
Yeah.
good thing. Yeah.
I was just so happy and proud for over nothing, geek pride, where it's like, and he happened to know exactly what the journey from here to here in Rail Baron costs or something like that. You know what I mean? Who knows?
That's a Dave question, a Dave Clow question there.
Exactly. And I've been reading further the Galaxy Raiders Abyss book by Bill Keith, and I don't just get mentioned, that is the Baltus effect, doesn't get mentioned once. It's throughout the book. He talks about the Baltus effect and Baltus radiation. So hats off to Bill's kindness and whatever he did to include me in one of these wonderful stories. It
He
really,
must be getting desperate to scrape the bottom of the barrel
I
there.
was going to say, I ran out of every good name. So maybe
Yeah.
I'll use this ring guy. It's like anybody that sees that goes, I know that Al Baltus guy. He's nothing like that. He's not pretty colors. He's a jerk. So
He should have made it an orange glow. That would have been even better.
exactly. So I just, for all those reasons, I'm like, the world's going to hell. There's an avalanche of horror happening, and yet I've had little fun things in my life lately that I got a chance to go to just the right comedy show and just the right. Oh well. So
Nice. Good.
all
It's
right,
starting to be a good summer for you. I mean, summer's still coming, but it's leading up to it. That's good.
exactly. Not this weekend, but the next weekend, we're going to the ACPT, the American Crossword Puzzle Tournament. And like, it's weird to go to something for the first time when you're 65 and 67, but I think there's a category for like, not only for elders, but for first timer elders and stuff like that. So we'll see if, can Colleen and I still remember how to write, by pencil. I guess we can, because
Right.
we do that's how we do puzzles in the bathroom and stuff like that. But out of just that level of curiosity, when I was on Jeopardy, I was really curious. can I really compete in this way? It's easy when you're sitting at home in your robe
Right.
to just da 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 like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, and yet I did okay. And so I'm curious about this thing too. I've done puzzles all my life, but the people who go to these things that's really their life. I have a
Right.
hundred different interests, and this might be
It's the
wow.
Bobby Fischer of crossword
Yes,
puzzles.
exactly. And so if I just get that I'm in the top 200 or something like that, I'll be like, okay, I made it in the top half. I'm okay. I really wasn't
You
a
know,
gun to your head.
you got to word it correctly. So let's say there's 300 people there.
Right.
You say, well, I was in the top 300.
Exactly. Damning with faint praise. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
How well did you do? Well, they didn't force me out of the building.
Nobody laughed. Nobody
Exactly.
laughed.
I did. Do you see the signs of like overripe fruit that came my way when I sucked so much? So,
Right.
so Colleen and I have been, we've been in training. We've been doing our crossword puzzles and that kind of stuff. And so
Do you play
I'm
the Rocky theme?
like that, so we can go up those stairs in Stamford, Connecticut. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
Uh,
actually, they moved that statue to stop people from running up the steps.
that is exactly right. When we were in Philadelphia a year and a half ago or something like that, I had read in some kind of guide website that they had done that, and we really were planning on doing that. As just doing our little, and it's unfortunate because you think even if that might cause a little bit of a traffic jam, that's where it belongs. That's
It's
that's
a,
the
it's a,
iconic location for the thing. Oh well. Oh well.
yeah, it's an attraction for the
Yeah.
city, and
Exactly.
a big one actually. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that idea I always have with the AR thing that I been slowly working on, that would be cool to have your phone out, go there, and actually watch Rocky run up the steps.
That's true, and like, you even try to like that I really did recreate exactly the last couple big jump steps, and then the at the top and stuff like that. I'd want to do it. That if somebody was recording me, I was close to what was going on in the movie
Right.
instead of gagging and struggling up those last few steps. That's a lot of steps.
Right. So, so I over the weekend I went to a writers conference, which is why I didn't make it to the expo.
Okay.
Um, and up at Cuyahoga Library at the Writers Center, they do amazing stuff there. I mean, it's one of only two or three writers centers in a library in the U.S. Uh,
Interesting. Okay.
so it's a great resource for any local writers. John Bruning from Flinch Books with
Yes.
uh, Jim Beard. He goes there a lot. My buddy Jay goes and does a lot of talks. So I went to the conference, and I'm kind of at the point where there's not a lot sitting in on workshops where I'm going to learn something new.
Okay.
There might be a
Just a
little bit of help.
refresher, just a re-energizer, maybe that kind of thing.
Yeah, meet some people.
Mhm.
My buddy Jay did a talk. I sat in on it, and he didn't say anything that I haven't already heard him say like 3 or 4 times. But you have all these new people that wanted to argue about certain things, and he's like, "Hey, look, you know what? I've been doing this for like 16 years. I've published over 1 million words. I've got 14 books under me or something like that. I've actually been doing it, and he's kind of like implying you're still working on your first book. Why are you arguing with me? you
Okay.
know?
Especially when someone's giving you their secret sauce and they're kind of telling you that
Well,
maybe it's not. It's like, well, the proof is in the pudding, if you
the,
will.
the
Work for
thing that
me.
Jay was doing and does, he's
Yeah.
like, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to lie to you. It's like the chances of any of you having a successful book and making a living at it is close to zero. There
Okay.
you go. And I think that type of thing, people want that dream still, and they
Okay.
want to argue. And then one lady wanted to monopolize because she was arguing about AI and how it sucks. It doesn't write good. It's go away, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, it keeps getting better. And if you think it doesn't work right, then you're not asking it the right prompts. There are people that are becoming professional prompt writers and they get amazing results. It's all in that, prompt. And she's like, no, no, no. And he had to move on. Then there's another lady that wanted
Hopefully
to,
the room is like saying, I came here to hear him talk, not you. So please let's
yeah,
move on.
exactly. And then there's another lady that is just getting started and she doesn't even really know enough to put her mind around it all, but she wanted like all her answers right then and tell her step by step what to do type thing. And
Okay.
it's kind of like, oh my God, people, But the best part of the day was the author in residence. They have an author in residence at the Cuyahoga Library. So any author can go up there and schedule a meeting with these people and sit with them. Several of them I've
Kind of like
had
the
on my,
poet laureate, you know what I mean? For a year,
yes,
this person is sponsored. That's interesting. Okay.
yeah, several of them in the past I had on my writers podcast. Several of them were on there, so I knew some of them. And I didn't know who all the speakers were. I didn't look things up. I was just like, I'm going to this, whatever.
Okay.
So the keynote guy starts speaking. He's a young guy, and he's talking about some of the books he's done. But he wrote an story arc for Miles Morales Spider Man, and it
How
published by
cool.
Marvel. I mean, I have the
Yeah.
books, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. And it's
and I'm
funny.
like,
There's so many young people in that field now that I don't recognize all the names, and yet you bump into them. It's like you are indeed like they gave you Spider-Man. That's a big, trust from the biggest
yeah,
publisher in the world to have you guys. That's cool. All right.
right. So I was like, man, I should have, gotten my books and looked closer. But, a lot of times it's like, these people are all local. I don't know them anyway. I didn't
Okay.
really think about it. So we've got a Spider Man writer up in Cleveland, close to you,
Very cool.
which was pretty cool.
I was. We need to like not here on air, but you and I need to brainstorm as to. We've only had like 3 people that we've interviewed in 5 years. We really could do much more of this because you and I know enough people or know about enough people that we really could just give them a call and say, hey, we got our 2,500 fans. We're not a million place, but we're both pretty fun to talk to. And the focus of us is definitely on the kinds of things you're doing. So I met a dozen people that I wouldn't mind. So you're a game designer. Let's walk through how you made this cool game that you developed. You're an independent author, and all the various different ways in which we could do this. There are comic book creators like out of Cleveland, you know what I mean, and like
Yeah.
and not only the current batch, but I know that there's Steely veterans like Tony Isabella down in Medina and Craig
Yeah,
Russell.
all you got to do to see Tony is go to the Akron Comic Con. He's at every single one.
There
So,
and like I don't know, um the Siegel Schuster Society, who is working at getting the Superman Plaza, multiple statues and so forth, right near the
yeah.
convention center. They would love a chance to come on and talk about their journey, talk about how they first came up with ideas and the various different helps and resistances that they've gotten from various different things.
Right.
So that we really should brainstorm that, and that'd be a very fun way of opening this up. Some of our best things have been the great talk we had with Ted Sikora and the great,
Yeah.
horror, like there's all kinds of things that we can do that will be, our next expansion. You know what I mean?
Get
So
some of your prog rock guys you talked to, the bands. I'd love to talk
absolutely.
to some of them.
When I had lunch with I was at the Prague stock in New Jersey, and really when I talked, we have a cool podcast, a little and all kind of stuff. They were like, "We'd love to come on. We love talking about this kind of stuff. It's not even how can we sell more CDs and all that
It,
kind of
it,
stuff. It's just
it's
that
an
they
hour of
know
free marketing for them.
absolutely,
It's bootstrap.
yeah, and everywhere that they can have a link to. Here's where I get interviewed. Here's where I got some print and stuff like that. So we really should brainstorm a little bit about on everything. Our favorites, what are we reading, who's still alive, that kind of stuff,
Time for a lunch meetup.
like that. So anyway, that like I said, that I think that we would, given that from all the various different panel discussions and interviews that I saw, we are easily as good as anybody that I saw doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We really
Oh,
listen and pay attention. We really have
you
not
know,
just standard questions. What did you have for breakfast this morning? You know what I mean? We have done a pretty good job with talking to the people that we
right.
have, and that the discussions were not robotic. They were very like friendly and organic, and sometimes difficult because there's some difficult things to talk about. So I just maybe let's brush off our interview skills and let's get some of our
Get
friends
a
on
few.
and stuff like that, and even the people
Agreed.
that we don't know, but that I'd be fascinated to find out how Stephen King does things. You know what I mean? So let's
Oh man, if we could
shoot for
get
the
King
top.
on, Joe Hill. We could shoot for Joe Hill maybe.
There we go. But you know
So,
what? Sometimes all the guys they're just waiting for the phone call. It's like
yeah.
you don't know me from Adam, but I'm a longtime reader, and just like
Some sometimes it's that easy. I mean, I've told this before. I wanted. I never really worked it up, but I've talked about it to other authors, and I haven't necessarily practiced it as much, but I'm like, there's this thing where you make yourself the expert. You just believe you're good. You just have to be a little better than the people you're talking to. And
Okay.
that's so much the truth. There are so many times I feel like, oh, nobody listened to me on this. I'm not that good at this. I don't know enough about this. And then I go somewhere and I see somebody else doing kind of the same thing. And I'm like, wow, they suck. I'm way better than they
Yeah,
are.
exactly. Or I just already sitting here without having to do any prep. I'm better than that.
Yeah,
That's exactly
exactly.
right.
Yeah. So that's what I tried to keep that sometimes. I think it's gotten harder as I've gotten older. It was easier to be brash when I was younger, but that's how I got on the cruise ship. I just contacted a bunch of agents that dealt with cruise ships, said, "Hey, I was the number one chair in the jazz orchestra at Akron U. I'm the number one student of the year for composition. I play bass. I've been playing jazz in the jazz club. I'd love to be on the cruise." And like literally, they called me up and said, "Hey, when can you come?" It was just
That's
that.
wonderful. That's
Yeah.
great.
So,
Way long ago when I was in debate in high school, I was also did some, i.e., improvisational events, and one of them was extemporaneous speaking. And ever since I did any of that kind of stuff, this isn't at all arrogant. I think it's really true. There isn't an hour that I couldn't fill talking about anything. You know what I mean? If you want to talk about about peanut butter, I can immediately start riffing about what I know about peanut butter and my experiences with peanut butter and who I know is like how did the Reese's Corporation start, whatever else it might be, and the enthusiasm and that the ability to make those connections. It really, of course, there are topics that I would be like more enthusiastic than knowledgeable, but there's all kinds of things that I'm halfway there on 1,000 different topics. You know what I mean? If
right.
you lived a life and paid attention. So I that's one of the things that emboldens me to do these things with you every week. We'll never run out of things to talk about. It's not like we're sitting there with dead air time and oh God, I didn't take notes. It's so easy to just having lived a full life, and here's a new experience, and we have reasonable vocabularies and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry, this isn't meant to be, oh well, you were smart, oh well, you're so patting yourself on the back here. And yet that's how people that do these kinds of things, they have to have a certain level of confidence. Bob Uecker never worried about, am I going to be able to call a baseball game and be witty during it, because he had 50 years of yes I can.
Right.
You know what I mean? And especially compared to any number of other people who are a little more boring, stony, you knew that he would stand out just because he was at least better than 90% of the field. And that's all that you need. You don't need to be the Bobby Fischer. You just need to be
Right.
in that top 20, I guess. And you're still a good guest or a good interviewer and things like that.
Right.
Oh, okay.
All right. Hey, did I show you these or talk about these yet?
No,
The
I don't think
final
so. Final
final
girl.
girl games.
No. Okay.
Okay, so I saw these a couple years ago at Battlegrounds local game store,
Okay.
and I with Colin moving and where I live, I've started getting into some game groups and stuff more. But there's a lot of times with work or whatever, I don't feel like driving all the way to Canton and almost an hour away to play games for an hour and
Two
a half.
hours worth of gaming. Exactly right.
Yeah. So I'm like, I know there's some solo games out there. What are some solo games? So I've got on this little mini quest to find solo games. Well, some of what I already have has solo variants, or you can play solo. Cooperative games are really good at having solo abilities.
Interesting.
Um, you know, so I ran into this. It's called Final Girl. It's by Van Ryder Games. They are solo play only. There's no cooperative, no multiplayer. It's just solo only.
Okay.
But in horror, if you don't know, the final girl is in the slasher films, the one girl that is alive at the end of the film.
Exactly that. She's managed to avoid death and not exactly
Yes.
not have sex, which leads to death and stuff
Right.
like that. Okay.
Thank you, Jamie Lee Curtis, for being the first final girl.
Exactly.
Colin
Okay.
Colin always says because of the Predator movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger is his favorite final girl.
There, exactly.
So, but I discovered these games, and what they are is it takes all the slasher movie tropes and turns it into a solo game. So each one you buy, so it's got a base core. You have to have the base core,
Okay.
and then they have feature films that they've released as a box. And each feature film, the first one is kind of like Friday the 13th. There's one that's kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street.
Makes
Uh,
sense.
you know,
Yeah.
and each one comes with two different final girls. So you could play a couple different times with different girls with different abilities, a killer, and a location. And it's really well put together. I mean, the box unfolds, and that's your map. And then it's got everything in a nice little case.
Very cool.
And then there's the killer tracking. I'm holding it down. Sorry, things are falling. Um, but they go in seasons. There's 5 films per season,
Okay.
and they're up to the 4th season. They're just getting started with. But it's a solo thing, and I've checked into it. Like, oh, this is kind of cool. So they wrote lore and scenario books. So each killer and girl has its own little story, and they have setups. But then the final battle between them, they wrote gruesome deaths. So every combination of killer at different with the girls, they wrote a gruesome death story
Got it. Exactly.
about it.
Because you got to get the good harpooning in there. You got to get the good.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So I was like, these guys are really putting a lot of time into this. And
Yeah.
so I'm very excited. I've gotten like the whole first season to play through. Once Colin moves, and I'm sitting around. Of course, now it's summer. When am I going to be sitting in the house very much during the summer?
And yet,
So
that's I there's any number of times that I've been very, very social, had a wonderful weekend, and then like Sunday night, it's like, you know what I want to do? I want to go and like go into a dungeon, just me and my spells or my sword, and hack and slash and collect treasure. And so I play many games, not cooperatively and as part of a party and stuff like that. That it's just that way. The game is all my own pace. It's all my own. Where do I want to go?
right,
I'm gonna. So it I think that that's kind of like the Caven Commons way that people do things. When I was working for a long time, you had not only your office where you'd retreat to get work done, but you had all the things that you go and have conversations and you get little sparks of ideas by interacting with your fellows. And I think you need both. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It isn't good to isolate yourself, and it isn't only to always be out. So I understand that when you're in that mind frame, these are a perfect vehicle, and especially with you guys knowing so much about horror and understanding the tropes and the backgrounds and the scenes, and like, if I'm in a haunted house, I can expect a certain number of things to happen. Where would the
right.
jump scares be? Where's the chute that's going to take me to the basement that I didn't mean to go to, or whatever else it might be? The locked door, and I can hear snuffling noises
Right.
on the other side. So interesting. Okay.
And I'm pretty impressed with the company. They started off doing everything like Kickstarter, which I missed. I didn't even know about at the time, but they try to balance it out because some people like deluxe games with all the figures and everything cool, and other people like, well, I don't want to spend $80 on a game I'm going to play 3 or 4 times.
Right. That, especially not
So
knowing enough about it to know if it is an $80 game instead of a
right.
$10 game that they, okay, right.
Right. So just the fact that you have a core box that you get that has most of the elements that you use, and then the feature films are separate. So that core box, it's $20, but it gets used for all the feature films. And then each feature film is $20 with 2 different girls. So instead of a bunch of $40 games, you buy the $20 ones, and then you just buy those like you want. But if you want a little more, they sell figures separately. So it comes with little wooden meeples that just look generic, but you can buy figures if you want to do that. Then they have mats if you want to buy mats. This, like I said, the box opens up into the map and stuff you can play on. But if
Yeah.
you want that nice fold out neoprene map that sits there and looks cool,
Right.
you
It's
can get
orthogonal
that.
that you can fit pieces together and it makes for a whole different play. Just that
Yeah,
there's different kinds of fandoms, and some people really love the figures or the map or the costumery or the
right.
backstory. And so you can cater to each of those things based on how far they want to get into it in different directions. Very
Yeah.
clever, very
and,
cool.
and, and like I said, the books, those are separate. So you can do add-ons and build it however much you want.
Yeah,
Get something for a weekend that costs you $25, you're good to go. uh
exactly.
so
There
yeah.
were a couple things like that there where they had, here's the base thing and here's the extension sets. And once in a while, it's like, well, I've never heard of this. It's kind of in the same way you're talking about it. And yet it's got 30 different extensions. How is it never popped up on my radar? That's always kind of an interesting, amazing thing to me, is that I'm
Yes.
tied into a whole bunch of these different worlds. And yet sometimes it's West Coast and it hasn't penetrated into the Midwest or whatever else it might be.
Right.
So,
I did find another company just yesterday that for the last 15 months, they have been doing a solo play game of the month and putting it on Kickstarter or Game Found Kickstarter essentially.
Okay.
So I didn't hear about this. I didn't see anything about it, but the last one was in February, and I'm like, I just visited. But what's worse, the last one was unofficially just, I mean, you can tell looking at it, it's called Paranormal, but when you look at it, it looks like Supernatural. It's got a black car, it's got two brothers,
Right.
and I'm like, I missed it. And they're not releasing it to retail. If you missed the Kickstarter, sorry to hear it. It's just
Okay.
like I would love to get a hold of that.
It is a little bit weird to find out. Like, there's two ways of looking at that. Once in a while, when you come in late, it's like, well, at least now I know that I am not waiting for the next installment and that kind of thing, or that it's not going to ever get finished. Which is, a friend named Jeff is like, I don't buy a series until it's all done because I've had too many series that 2 out of 3 books came out and then the guy died or stopped or
Right.
whatever else it might be. But having said that, it's very frustrating to be like, I never heard about this and it's already gone. And so I can't even be part of telling other friends of like, this is so cool. You got to watch this, try this, etc. So yeah, it's, I don't make a point of always staying current. I kind of count on the fact that I have like touch up against so many different things that I'll get awareness of it and stuff like that. And don't try to be a completist in every single way because there's only so many hours in the day. But once in a while, the magic thing happens of I started watching this thing early, Archer. You know what I mean? And like, just it was unlike anything else on TV. And I told all my friends, "Oh, you can't believe! I know if you don't like swearing, then maybe this isn't for you. And yet, if you like this series that's aware of all the other conventions of various different spy stuff, and I laugh out loud in a half an hour more than I do at anything else that I'm
Right.
watching currently, et cetera, et cetera. It's cool to be that fanboy thing of being the guy that turns people on to other things. I really do love that. You know what I mean? There's a so like I'm giving you a gift. Believe me, you have to read this series.
Yeah,
Kind
yeah,
of thing.
I get it. And you turned me on the Planetary, even though Colin, talked about it a bit too.
Okay,
So yeah.
very
Okay,
cool.
well, I'm gonna have to get rolling. I got plenty to do today. So
Okay. So thank you for the so it Final Girl is one of those things that if I bought the base and started to like, you know what I mean? Like
so
because
so
for
I
me,
had
when I only play certain games together, I'm looking for things that because I outlast her most days, I sleep less. What would I do from 10 till 1
right.
that will be okay? And
I've seen you on Steam a couple times.
they're
Oh,
like
Silent Online.
exactly.
Well, so what finally did it for me was I had kind of heard about it. I saw it at Battlegrounds, but I didn't check it out. I didn't know anything about it. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. Based on horror movies. That's funny. Haha. Well, I was at Barnes and Noble a while back and just walking around. I'm like, oh, there's that Final Girl game. I'm like, oh, it's on sale and it's got a what's this? It's a starter set. Okay, let's check that out. Well, it had
Okay.
the core box and the first feature film, and
Yeah.
it was on sale. So instead of like 40, $45, it was like 30. And I'm like,
A
okay,
sweet spot. Okay.
it's a horror game based on the final girl trope. It's solo. It fits a lot of my life right now. I
Yeah.
think I can spend $30. And then I got it and I'm like, oh man, this is amazing. I ran up the battleground and said, what do you got? Give me the rest of it.
Exactly. That is happening. You know, like is there anything better than when you start a new series and you find out that there's 13 books in the series and you get to go on the treasure hunt to the used bookstores and the game stores and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, I'm so happy I found out about this.
Yes. Colin just was talking about that. There's a few books he's looking for. And people have said, well, it's right here on eBay. You can get it here. And he's like, no, no, I want to find it. I want to go out and search. I want to talk to
Yeah,
the people that run the stores. I want to talk to the creators. I want to get out there. The fun is in searching for it. Yes, I'll be extremely happy when I find it, but that's part of the whole being a collector and being part of that environment and culture is
exactly.
going
The
out
treasure
to
hunt. That's exactly
yeah
right. Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
So with that, one of my favorite games is Thunderstone, and there's three variations of it. I've I had almost all of the first variation except for some promo cards,
Okay.
and after I got all this, I got like, well, I might as well look. So I've been going to find the promo card set. So I'm literally there is one promo card set that I can only find in German right now. So that's the last one to get like all of those cards.
So it really is Spiel that's been translated into English instead. That's
Yes.
interesting too. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
you get that. Wow, this is worldwide. This is not okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to ask Kevin and Renee if I go to the Western Pennsylvania, if they want to play that game. I'm like, look, I got them all. So,
Exactly. That's
all
cool.
right.
All right. I know you got things to do. As
Yep.
always, thanks very much. We'll talk again in a week.
Talk
Okay.
to you later, man. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Relentless Geekery Podcast. Come back next week and join Alan and Steven's conversation on geek topics of the week.